Marian Halcombe novels are Victorian thrillers. In this snippet, it's from the single Musketeer. Young William and his toddler sister, Mary, are dragged to an adult party in an Italian palazzo. And I think the year is like 1870. Our nanny swept past, carrying little Mary. No dawdling now, children, we're late. We hustled along a long, gloomy gallery and then down a grand but dusty staircase, its banister too heavily carved for sliding. The red wallpaper on the walls showed darker, large rectangles and squares of unfaded red where pictures had been removed. At the bottom, the double doors were 12 feet tall. Nanny carefully set Mary down onto her little feet. Now see that you mind your manners. The double doors swung open and we tottered forward into the glaring lamplight. I've been in barns smaller than that drawing room. In the middle of the far wall, an enormous fireplace loomed, an ornate black marble chimney breast at least 10 feet high. The ceiling seemed to be populated with flying angels, but I blinked and saw they were painted people, not very heavily clad. In spite of the roaring fire, the chill was fierce. Everyone stood or sat near the warmth. Our own mamma was chattering vivaciously in French to some elderly gentleman. Papa saw us and gave me an encouraging nod. I licked dry lips. Manners meant we boys were supposed to bow and girls to bob a curtsy. But to whom? But family means you always have allies. My brother Micah, almost 17 years old, had taken refuge behind a cornery sofa. He jerked his head and pointed a thumb discreetly at the elderly gent sitting in the big winged armchair nearest the fire. Whew, this old buffer must be the Baron di Piccini, our host. I marched up to him and gave our host my best bow, the one that Mama drilled into me. Beside him, Mama said something in French, adding, "This is my second son, William." The old Baron barely glanced our way, which suited me perfectly. Half an hour of good behavior and we could be dismissed, hopefully to have dinner. But then little Mary stepped up. She was in the latest mode for baby girls: white ruffled skirts, a pink sash tied into a big bow in back, white ruffled pantalettes, tiny lace mitts, and wee pink velvet slippers. Her dark curls had been carefully brushed into ringlets, and she clutched a rag doll which also had dark yarn hair. Being only 3 years old, she wasn't practiced at managing finery. As she made her curtsy, she tripped and fell flat. Before she began to cry, I hastily lifted her to her feet again. The old Baron glared down at us, his deep sunk eyes glittering. A terrifying old buzzard, he had a long curved nose and a long chin made longer with a snow-white door-knocker beard. His back was bent with years so that in his black frock coat he looked like a vulture. He bent over even more to glare down at Mary and snapped something incomprehensible in Italian. I will say, however, that Mary is truly a Camlet, plucked to the backbone, even though she was little more than a baby. She gazed up at the old man, cheery as a cricket. "How do you do, sir?" she piped. She had big gray eyes, and when she smiled, she looked like the cherub on a valentine. The old Baron barked something and held out a gnarled, yellowy hand. Mary put her own little lace-knitted hand into it, and in a trice was lifted up high to sit on the old fellow's bony knee. She perched there, as calm as you please, like a white kitten on a wall, while the old man bellowed and growled over her head at the other grown-ups. Mama, resplendent in dark ivory silk and velvet, beckoned me with a finger and nudged a hassock forward with her silk-slippered toe. Obediently I sat, taking care not to tread on her flounces or the old Baron's varnished leather shoe. It's not as poor sport as one might think to be marooned in a conversation in a strange language. By and large, grown-ups do not talk of interesting things. I was still young enough to be astonished they could sit still for so long without moving. Then something touched my neck. I put my hand up, and it stuck to my fingers. Cautiously, I examined it. I held a damp, round pellet, dark brown. I shot a cautious glance upwards and saw Mary looking down at me. She opened her mouth and stuck out her tongue, displaying a similar brownish drop. She had passed me a pastille, only slightly used. I put mine in my mouth. A powerful licorice essence immediately made my nose itch, and there was a bitter undertaste. But it seemed rude to complain. I watched from the side of my eye as the old baron took a flat tin from the table at his elbow, opened it, and extracted yet another pastille. He held it up in front of Mary's nose as if she were a spaniel. Obediently, she opened her mouth. He popped it in. When he turned away to put the box back on the table, she spat out the fresh comfit and tucked it into her lace mitt. How many did she have in there? Is it possible we've been raised to be rather too polite?